go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I was talking to somebody I volunteer with at the animal shelter, and she grew up in Alaska. And I think we were talking last week about surprise or something we're not familiar with. But for her, the aurora borealis was just a common occurrence. And, you know, she said she remembers being at the bus stop going to school and seeing it, you know, every so often. And so for her, it wasn't a big deal. So I thought, oh, that's it.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Familiarity. Brain just turns off interest in that. Seen that, done that. I'm not going to pay attention.
Well, you know, that reminds me of Mount Rainier. I mean, if we clearly had it visible every day, we would probably be more blah about it.
That's a good
point. But it comes out, you know, and oh, have you seen the mountain?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
That's true. That's a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah.
It happens to us in the sun. I mean, during the winter, if you see the sun, everybody reacts.
I'll go out and bask in the sun. Yeah. All right. Well, to get things going today, I found a curious little video that Dr. Keltner did, looking at kind of social implications of some of the ideas he has, and the video is called "Why Rich People Don't Care About You," which is kind of provocative. But he's talking with a younger student in this one, but it's interesting. So we'll start with that. See what you think. Hopefully all the sound will cooperate.
And how you are in terms of social.
Okay, can you hear him?
Yes.
The less compassionate, less empathetic you are as a human.
You know, as you rise in wealth and privilege, you share less, you feel less compassion to images of suffering. Rich high school kids in the United States are more likely to shoplift, right? And that's striking. I think it's our central failing.
One of the things that you talk about is the difference in social class.
Yeah.
And how things change.
Oh, man.
Are we worst people the richer and more powerful we become? Because your research seems to show that.
Yeah, I would say yes. And I'm sorry to say that, you know, it's you know, I got interested in social class, actually living in England. You know, I lived in England in 1978. And United States is very blind to social class. We're now more aware of it. Bernie Sanders, et cetera, rightfully so, 1% critique. You know, 80s, 90s, we're just blind to it as a more egalitarian time. And I lived in Nottingham, England, very working class town, in a very tough time in England's history of, you know, coal strikes and the like. And it was tough. And the English had this just much more sophisticated understanding of class and differentiations between on the dole and working class and posh and, you know, all these categories. I was like, wow, class is everywhere. It affects how people speak and dress and eat and so forth. And so we started to apply social class to what we've been talking about, like the compassion, awe, gratitude, empathy, kindness, sharing, altruism, and just, you know, across studies and, you know, largely in the United States. So I think you could question whether this applies to Holland or UK or Japan, where there's less inequality, I might add. You know, as you rise in wealth and privilege, you share less, you feel less compassion to images of suffering. You know, you see an image. This was a striking study to me of, you know, it's a movie about a child who has cancer, and poorer people show activation of the vagus nerve, which is part of compassion. You know, it causes you to like want to help. Well-to-do people, less activation. They feel less awe as you rise in the social class hierarchy in the United States, are more impolite. And so that was part of my power paradox book, was that story about the class. I hesitate, I worry about, like, am I a worse person? And I'd rather use your earlier language of like, what are the structural conditions that get in the way of this? And you think about, you know, rising in wealth and privilege and class is you create a life that makes it harder to be kind, you know, that people are assisting you with things, and you don't come into contact with suffering. You know, you live in a neighborhood in the United States or probably UK where it's like, you don't see it, you know, and so it doesn't train those tendencies. And, you know, frankly, Stephen, I think this is increasingly true in the UK, but in the United States, you know, with 1 in 6 people impoverished, life expectancy is dropping, you know, 700,000 unhoused people in the United States. Where I live, Berkeley, California, everywhere you go, you're bumping into somebody who doesn't have a home. I think it's our central failure in the US is how privilege has short-circuited our better human tendencies.
How do we know that it's the increase in wealth and social class that is causing us to become less kind, less empathetic, less compassionate, or it's just assholes go further?
Yeah.
Like, there's a distinction there. Like, maybe these people were always assholes, and that's why they became successful or rich or wealthy or whatever, or in a higher social class.
Yeah. I mean, there are two, and that's a critical question, right? And people have long championed this idea that, well, maybe all of this, what it really tells us is if you practice our compassion, you don't rise in the ranks and you don't gain wealth and the like. And there are two rebuttals to that idea. The first, which I chart in the power paradox, which people still don't believe too much, but on balance today, people who practice empathy, who listen and share resources, practice gratitude, rise in the ranks. They do better in social hierarchies. And that replicates in a lot of contexts. And really what happens is, this is why I call it the power paradox, is once I have everybody's respect and, you know, wealth and the like, then I tend to misbehave, right, in the ways we've talked about through a lot of different forms of unethical behavior. The other rebuttal is we've actually done experiments, right? And you can take a middle-class individual and you can get them into the mindset like, hey, you're actually have a lot of advantage vis-a-vis most of society through simple manipulations, right? Just think about how you compare to a lot of poor people. And they're like, oh, I'm doing really well. And that simple shift in mindset leads to reduced compassion, reduced empathy. So you can actually move people around where you give them the sense that they're privileged, and it tends to undermine these tendencies.
Jesus.
I know.
That's powerful.
It is. And, you know, I worry about it. I worry about it all.
And it's been a little while since I watched this. I don't think he gets to this idea, but that just makes me think, well, you need to test the reverse, right? Take a middle class person and have them compare themselves to rich people and so feel poor. Do you get the opposite result out of that little manipulation that you're doing? That would be an interesting experiment to go both ways.
A lot. What you know, the kind of poor distribution of privilege in the United States and increasing UK and other countries is doing to the social fabric. It's problematic.
It's interesting because there's kind of a long prevailing stereotype that rich people are like bad, like they're like less compassionate, less empathetic, and I always wondered whether that was just, I don't know, was it true? Was it people being jealous? Was it just too much of a broad generalization? Was it, you know, based on the acts of maybe a few?
Yeah.
But you're telling me that the science supports the fact that generally the richer you are and the higher you are in terms of social class, the less compassionate, less empathetic you are as a human.
Yeah, and you know, and it is, I mean, that's the broad argument. I've given you a couple of findings here. There are all kinds of other findings that speak to this.
Jesus.
You know, this is one of my favorites, is, you know, in these epidemiologists who are studying broad trends in social behavior discovered this accidentally. They're interested in who shoplifts as a teenager in the United States. You know, a basic unethical tendency, really costly for businesses in the United States. Is it the rich or the poor?
Well, you know what, who I would assume it would be, but I feel like I'm wrong.
It's the rich. Rich high school kids in the United States are more likely to shoplift, right? And that's striking. They've got their parents' credit card. They can buy whatever they want, and they violate that social rule. This is where it gets really worrisome. My former student, Michael Krauss, did really nice work on US senators and US policymakers. You know, American politicians are rich. They increasingly so. And he was simply interested in, does your degree of privilege or wealth predict regressive policy preferences? Like, let's not give resources to schools for the poor. Let's not fund, Medicare. Let's really move wealth through taxation policies to the well-to-do. And the wealthier you are, the more you preferred and advocated for, serious economic policies that hurt the poor and benefit the well-to-do, who already have, in the US, the 1%, they have enough. They have more than enough, right? Why not share a little? So it's deep.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor.
Okay, let's see here. There we go. Yeah, that one I just thought I thought it was just really an interesting sort of implication to bring into into all of this. Talk about awe. And the one with the teenagers is really kind of shocking and I think telling. That's, yeah, interesting. And it is curious, why, just psychologically, if you're more secure, why do people then act like they're less secure, right? They want to hold on to more and more, but even when you have more, it's that would be a really curious thing to get the social psychologist on.
I think that might be just a manifestation of the privilege. I can do whatever I want because I'm rich. I can shoplift. I can, be mean to people because it's not going to affect me. If I get caught, my dad will bail me out. It's just sort of a conceit that, the average person wouldn't shoplift because it's not right. But the rules don't apply to me because I'm rich. So I'm going to shoplift. I like that new headphone or something. And I have 3 headphones at home, but, I'm just going to prove that I'm above the average person. So, and there's a lot of that floating around in our politicians.
The other thing that I've heard in terms of the people and politicians who don't want to help poor people is something called moral jeopardy or moral, they use the word moral, like if we help these people, then they won't help themselves and become lazy and so they sort of, yeah, it just seems like a justification.
Yeah, rationalization for
a rationalization for their behavior.
There might also be a bit of, well, I got wealthy. That means anyone can get wealthy, and they're just being lazy.
Yeah, that's another.
And of course, I started on third base, but
right. That's
beside the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
people miss Alex.
I can offer an N of 1 observation. I live in this little town, and my husband just ran for the city council.
Oh.
So I saw him transform during the time that he was running, which has been about a year, from this really kind man into somebody that when he was asked to pass a policy, he would stop and think, are the people who support me, who are the rich people, because they are the ones that get money, are they going to stop supporting me because I support this compassionate policy? And I have seen it grind him down in a year.
Wow.
So just for what it's worth, that's an N of 1.
Huh.
He was a much kinder person before he ran for office.
Huh. Well, that's interesting.
I think also people live in silos for their whole life. I remember when Mitt Romney was running for president, that he said, if you can't, in not wanting to support Pell Grants and things like that, if you can't
afford to go to college, just borrow the money from your dad.
Yeah.
He just had no concept.
Hmm. Yeah, like I did.
Or Bush in the supermarket who didn't know what a scatter was for.
I was thinking that very same thing. Yes, that he'd never been in a grocery store.
But I was thinking this doesn't relate so much to politicians, but in terms of the kids maybe that steal or acquisition in general, I think, isn't there also the tie into awe and so on, that this feeling of having enough, you know, our market-driven society, of course, encourages us to think we don't have enough.
Yeah.
And I think it would be almost anti-capitalist or something really bad if we were satisfied with going out in nature and being awed by no-cost items, because
Right.
what do we do to the GP?
Right. What would that do to the GDP? Right.
GDP is what I meant, yes.
Yeah.
I read somewhere along those lines that in the 20s, people had most everything they needed, at least perhaps the middle class. And that's when advertising started, is to make people buy things they didn't really need.
I think too, if you're taught to value money and things, and you have some kind of hole in your life, you just pour more and more of that into it, and you think it's going to fill it, but it doesn't, just like substance abuse.
Well,
Well,
and
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, so if people, as they become more wealthy, have experiencing less awe, right, then there's that sort of normal human technique for feeding the soul, right? They don't have access to it, so then you have that hole that they try to fill with things instead of with awe. Yeah.
But I was also going to say, I'm not an expert on this, but what role does traditional religion play? You know, like maybe I don't know if it's Calvinist or whatever, the tradition that says, if you're hardworking, the Lord will bless you with riches. You know, people interpret that literally. You know, I deserve what I'm getting because I was hardworking, and these other ones deserve what they're getting because they have not been. This was what was picked up by somebody else earlier. You can't feel blessed by God if you witness poverty and you know, a whole lower class that doesn't seem to be blessed without finding a reason why that is so, because otherwise you have to accept you know, injustice.
Ideologies that can be self-serving that way. Yeah, it's the generic name now is called prosperity gospel.
Oh,
but yes, it has roots in Calvinism. Yeah.
God helps those who help themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a curious thing. Because Calvin personally would just be utterly astounded that anyone could possibly have taken his thinking and moved it in that direction. Like, weren't you all paying any attention at all? That's what they did with it. That's the problem with writing books hundreds of years later. People are going to do things with it that you don't necessarily know or approve of.
Then think about thousands of years of a book.
Yeah, right. People reading gospel. Okay. The next one I have a little bit longer. I think it's 15 minutes, with a guy who's actually a professional filmmaker, and so he started off life in the 60s just picking up a little Kodak camera, I think. But he has this interest in like microscopic images, and so his talk, it's a TED talk. He has wonderful, awe-inspiring images that he's taken along the way. Let's see. There we go. Whoop. How did I get there? This one, yeah, definitely want to be.
You know, as a filmmaker, I have to admit, I've imagined being on the stage getting an Academy Award. But this is cooler because I get more than 20 seconds. I love making the invisible visible because there's so much around us we can't see. And using the art of time lapse and slow motion cinematography, I can take people on a journey through time and scale. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to see the world from the point of view of a hummingbird or a butterfly? If you could see life from their point of view, it would expand your vision, it would open your heart, it would unveil the mysteries of life, and that would be truly transformational.
We are all born with a sense of wonder. Sometimes it's triggered by astonishing feats, monuments to mankind's capabilities, extraordinary talents and gifts, or scientific discoveries that push the boundaries of comprehension. More often, we experience wonder by truly seeing the world around us. Wonder and awe allow us to transcend the ordinary. Even to test our concepts of time and scale.
Whoa. Whoa.
We are overcome with the sense of being small in the grand universe. We're unaware of past or future. We are, as they say, in the moment. We use the word breathtaking to describe it because it actually takes our breath away. Wonder inspires us to open our hearts and our minds to engender gratitude.
Thank you. So wonder and awe brings us into the present moment, and that unleashes our imagination. It helps us adjust our perception of time. It influences our decision-making. It makes us more patient, more willing to help others, and that makes life much more satisfying. It makes us feel rich in time. When was the last time any of you felt rich in time? We need to bring nature into our lives because it helps us build resiliency. People often ask me, how did you get started filming all these beautiful shots of nature? Well, I didn't grow up in the woods. I actually grew up on the streets of Brooklyn. I think my first whitewater experience was racing popsicle sticks down the gutter. My parents were Holocaust survivors. They met after the war in a relocation camp. And after knowing each other for only 2 weeks, they decided to get married. And friends who they had just met stood in for their parents to walk them down the aisle. They came to America a few years later with my sister and nothing more than the clothes on their back. They were resilient. But growing up under their roof, I learned under that lens of gratitude that they appreciated every blessing that came their way, like food on the table, a roof over their heads, a steady job, and the miracle of having children. And under that roof, I also grew up wanting to make the world a better place. So I headed off to UCLA as a history major, but how could I study the French Revolution when there was a revolution happening right outside my door? The students were protesting against the Vietnam War, which turned out to be an unjust war. And of course, the police brutality stopped the protest from happening. We didn't have camera phones back then, so I quickly had to learn how to use a camera. And that camera protected me and other people from being beaten. This is an FBI agent on campus that was taking photos and writing down names and arresting all the student leaders. These were my first photographs. I also learned it was a lot easier for me to hand in a photo essay than to write a paper. Mm-hmm. And in the times we're experiencing right now, it probably doesn't hurt to take a look back and see that maybe there's a connection. The repression that happened back then spawned Earth Day and the liberation movements for women and people of color. I continued to capture magic moments, and I fell in love with photography and filmmaking. And I continued to capture moments by chasing the light. And that's when I met my greatest teacher. Mother Nature taught me everything about lighting and composition, texture, color, and movement. She also taught me how to live a creative and sustainable life, because Mother Nature isn't greedy and will never waste a single molecule. She also helped me connect with the deepest part of my soul. So after I graduated, I went to Northern California to a little town called Elk. I didn't have much money, but I did have time and a sense of wonder. And I imagined, what if I could take these old cameras to shoot time-lapse built in the 1920s, but they had this big AC motor attached to the back of them, and obviously my extension cord wouldn't be long enough to go outdoors. So I thought, what if I could build a small little motor that ran on batteries so that I could take these cameras outdoors and capture the magic of fog rolling in and out, and shadows moving through the forest, and shafts of light through landscapes, and flowers opening and closing. I've had a camera rolling now 40 years, nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, capturing time-lapse flowers. And I've squeezed that into 16 hours of film. I want to share with you what life would be like if you could see it from the point of view of a flower.
Desde el inicio, hemos soñado con crear un futuro mejor. Ahora tenemos la meta de ser carbono neutral antes del 2050. Y seguiremos soñando, donde sea que vayamos.
So the flowers seduced me by their beauty, color, taste, aroma. And what I learned after shooting these flowers all these years is that beauty is nature's tool for survival because we protect what we love. And that's why puppies are cute. That's why kittens are cute. And babies are cute. That's why your kids are cute. If they weren't cute, you throw them out with the bathwater. Called unconditional love. And your grandkids are cute. We're hardwired to love because DNA wants to move.
Cute, by the way, is actually a biological thing that's common to mammals. So mammal babies have a higher head to body ratio than adults and a higher eye to head ratio than adults do. And all mammals respond to that as cute. And it's why even other like, you know, dogs will take care of kittens when they encounter them. It's because even the dog sees the kitten as cute. So yeah, it's a mammal thing. I thought that was just astounding when I learned that.
Forward. And so does our living planet. So I've always imagined, what would it be like? Could I put a time-lapse camera in space in order to film the Earth? Well, thanks to breakthrough technology and using data, we can simulate that image, the movement of humanity on Earth. Every blue dot you see is a plane taking off. And using data, we can create an image that's invisible and above us constantly, the vast network of air traffic over America. We can do the same thing with ships at sea. We can use data to create a time-lapse image of a global economy in motion. And decades of data can show us the currents in the ocean, clouds in the atmosphere, lightning adorned by the aurora borealis. This could be the ultimate time-lapse image, the anatomy of Earth brought to life. Thank you. So let's come down to Earth, but not all the way. This is the Soarin' ride that I did for Disney theme parks. And I was fortunate enough to be able to travel around the world and capture these incredible wonders. But sadly, a lot of them are on the verge of disappearing because of climate change. In China, 2 hours outside of Beijing, we could not take off for 2 days because the visibility was so bad. I literally could not see the Great Wall below me. In Greenland, the elders talked to me about the fact that the ice was too thin for them to hunt. And that melting ice is raising the sea levels. And in Fiji, many of the small islands are already going underwater. But the highlight for me last year was during the Paris summit. A number of filmmakers were asked to go to Rome and project imagery on the Vatican in order to support Pope Francis's encyclical to protect the environment in front of 20,000 people. Imagine how I felt, the son of Holocaust survivors, being able to project light and beauty on the Vatican, given that they were silent during the roundup of Jews in Italy and throughout Europe. Times do change, things get better. I've got hope, but I think we have to remain vigilant. I wish I could have shared it with my parents.
From the beginning, we've dreamed of creating a better future. Now we're setting.
Thank you. So in these times of breakdown and breakthrough, we need to imagine that solutions are possible. We can't allow our political leaders to turn their backs on science in fear and denial. We need to get them to work. We need to compel them to work for solutions and partnerships that we need. We also need to reach out to people that have different views than we do by finding common ground and being able to agree that we want a healthy planet for our children. These are difficult times, and we're facing big challenges, but we can rise to the occasion. We need to wake up and imagine that we can live in a better world. We can't waste a single day because this is our one and only home. We need to protect what we love and celebrate life. Thank you.
Okay, what do you think?
Very inspiring.
Just
I
magic.
have to say, your comment about cuteness in mammals, my dad would often say, even the tortoise thinks its babies are cute.
No, it doesn't, but that's cute. Oh my. It made me think there, especially at the end, that in there is a sense in which we're lucky that we're confronting global warming at a time when we have access to images from around the world, that we can see that this really matters by what's happening with glaciers and collapsing, or watching desertification, that you can use time lapse to show changes, and it would be so much harder to try to convince people that they needed to do something if you couldn't use that as a tool to show them. So we at least have that benefit. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's a tool.
Starting with that image of the Earth taken from the moon.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the beginning.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like you said, I'm not sure it's done any good, but
well, I mean, there are people think that we got the Clean Water Act and the EPA, all because of that photo. That if it wasn't for that photo, those would take a lot longer. Yeah, that's a great example. Is that one photo, what it did? Yeah.
On the other hand, there are people who will say that those photos are faked.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are a problem.
And you seem to take it so well, Richard. Take it in stride.
We do what we can. You got to manage problems as they come up. What do we do? Okay, I have another one that I think also is a little bit more hopeful. Although we don't have a whole lot of time, so let me figure out. There were two I could choose from. Okay, I think we'll try that one. Oh, wait. Yeah, see, now I'm wondering, I don't think I showed this to you before. This late in the term, I've seen these things over and over. Okay. So this guy, Jason Silva, I've showed you a little bit of his stuff before, but I don't think I've showed you this, but it also includes his photography along the way.
Inherent paradox, the following idea. To experience something again for the first time. Sounds absurd, right? How is it possible that you can experience something again for the first time. There's only one first time. There's only one time when you can experience something with the hardly bearable ecstasy of direct energy exploding on our nerve endings, right? It's just not built into our constitution or our wiring. There's something called familiarity breeds boredom. There's something called hedonic adaptation. The point being, once you've had an experience, you can't have it again for the first time. You can have it again for the second time or the third time, but never again for the first time. And yet, the goal of all contemplative practices is a return to the deep nap, a return to the present, beyond the been there's and seen that's of the adult mind that inevitably cloud our capacity to ostensibly have a fresh experience. The astounding frontier of the present is constantly eluding us because we're trapped in a monkey mind of future anxiety and melancholy for the past. And that prevailing dread haunts the human animal. Everything else. I talk about this a lot because, like all of you, we all secretly want to get back to the sides of ourselves that we were tapped into as children. We all want to be more creative. We all want to be more engaged with the people that we love. We all want to enter what Diane Ackerman states of deep play. Spend money to go to the movies to become completely immersed in a netherworld. Right? We want to go on the hero's journey and slay the dragon. We want our lives to be infused with meaning. We want to matter. We want to struggle. We want to climb the summit of the mountain. We want to have realizations, right? Epiphanies that crack us open a little bit. We want to bring that back to the villagers. We want to share that deep truth. We want a truth bomb, right? And so it goes back again, contemplative practices, all these things, they're all trying to sell us away to rid ourselves of our clunkiness, right? To rid ourselves of our lenses of perception, to transcend, to cleanse the doors of perception. Michael Pollan has a great line. He says, a sense of first sight, unencumbered by knowingness. And it's interesting because we love to learn, we love to grow, we love to know. Understanding is a kind of ecstasy, said Carl Sagan. And yet, even though understanding is a kind of ecstasy, understanding for the first time is what we really get off on. And so it points actually inherently to the importance of forgetting as an important variable in our happiness too. We got to forget that we learned something so that we can learn it again, right? To have a sense of first sight, unencumbered by knowingness, that virginal noticing of the sensate world requires us to somewhat forget that we learned this before, that we've been there before, right? We're not just going to new places, but we're searching for ways to see the home world with new eyes. And they say this is enlightenment. They say this is illumination, right? When the doors of perception are cleansed, everything will be revealed to man as it is, infinite. Now, I'm exhausted, both literally and figuratively, from trying to convey to you that I too share this angst and this hunger to enter these childlike states of awe and reverence. I think all the romantic poets were tortured souls with broken psyches who nonetheless longed to see the world in a grain of sand, to see heaven in a wildflower, to fucking hold the goddamn infinity in the palm of our hands and hold fucking goddamn eternity in an hour, right? There's a reason why we get goosebumps and hairs in the back of our neck stand up when we hear these guys talk about it. The only people for me are the mad ones. Mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved. Aren't we all desirous of everything at the same time? Those who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like yellow Roman fucking candles exploding like spiders across the sky. Why do we hang these quotes in our classroom walls? Why did my mom hang those quotes in her classroom walls? And I came as a student, somewhat anxious, somewhat curious, somewhat hungry for answers and better questions. And I see it written on the wall. Minds are like parachutes. They only function when open. The only thing standing in your way is you. So I looked out the window of the classroom, like we all do, looking out the window of our metal coffins. Walker Percy said that the search for God, for truth, the search is what anyone would undertake if they were not sunk in the everydayness of their own lives, if they were not chained by the everydayness of their own lives. We created these systems and we hold these systems in place, but then these systems hold us in place too. We've entrapped ourselves. And to even become aware of the search is to be on to something. Ah, the possibility of something more. And not to be on to something. It's bigger. Not to be on to something is to be in despair, is to be slowly dying, is to be living a life of quiet desperation. It's the reason why half of these authors that wrote half of these truth bombs end up killing themselves in the end, right? Because the alternative to this illumination, to this sense of foresight unencumbered by knowingness, this platonic ideal, the alternative to that is unconsciousness, is the default setting, is the rat race, is the constant gnawing, soul-deadening sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. But we don't surrender. We will prevail. We will continue to rage against the darkness, against our darkness. Went to God just to see, and I was looking at me, she wrote. Maybe at the end of all our travels, we'll come back into ourselves to find what we were looking for. That's a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
It seems to me like a beat poet for the 21st century. It's just he's so passionate.
Talk about monkey mind. He is a representative of that. Maybe he had a little bit too much coffee, or
Well, that's what, yeah, the beat poets, right? They were hanging out in coffee shops. They were all dosed up on caffeine.
But do we really want to say that seeing something for the first time? I realize we've talked about the Northern Lights, and the person was kind of blah about it because she'd seen it many times. But I don't know if that holds generally, that you can't experience awe by seeing something again, or especially in nature, and especially with smaller things, you know. You look at certain poetry, kind of like, I don't know if you guys know Mary Oliver. She has a lot of nature-based poetry. I think it's a whole book of small awe experiences. It's not anyone is diminished by, you know, the other one that she's written. So he seemed so hyped to this person that you feel like, okay, yeah, he maybe needs this stronger this stronger input.
Well, the fact of nature always changing makes me wonder if that's part of it, that when you go back in nature, and even if you go to the same place, things have changed. And so, but so like if you compare that to like seeing a painting that's awe-inspiring, and since it doesn't change, the next time you go back will
that be the same?
Yeah. So I want, you know, it may be that nature just has this curious little feature built in, and it's always changing, so it can you know, evade our hedonic adaptations.
I think sometimes we just need a reminder. Like, I have a dog who has a terminal illness, and so every day it makes me pay attention. You know, this little miracle bag of bones that runs around my house, you know, it's a miracle.
I agree. I had a hard time with the idea of having to forget so that you can see things for the first time. It's called Alzheimer's. And I say that with a great deal of respect for people who have Alzheimer's, but it is not pleasant. And people who have Alzheimer's are not in constant awe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the frequency that you experience things is part of it. Like how many double rainbows does that guy have to see before it's just, oh yeah, there's another one. You You know, if
No,
you saw
that's
one,
yeah.
if you saw one every day, after a while, he would, okay, that's pretty amazing. But and the thing with a painting, every time you see a painting, especially if it's a great painting, you'll see something new. And maybe after the 50th time, you'll have covered it all. But
yeah, well, there's a wrinkle I can add to that, which is that you have changed in the time that between you saw it for the first time and the second time. So it can be a first experience in the sense that you are a little different. That what you bring to it has changed. And so I mean, early on, I think we also, I forget which one of you pointed this out, but the idea that all of these examples have to be or seem to be visual, and we need other kinds of examples too. So I was thinking about music, and I have friends who really love classical music. One friend who's a very accomplished pianist himself, and so they love going to the symphony, and I think especially if you can really appreciate it, and I do think sort of the fact of being a musician means you definitely can appreciate what other musicians are doing a lot better than lay people can. But anyway, so if you bring that appreciation into it and you have this experience sort of like going to Benaroya, and you're in this very elaborate, beautiful space, you're with a whole bunch of people, so you have that people thing going on, doing the same thing. And then it's been engineered to make the music sound really good, and so it does. So you have this amazing sound that's coming, and the waves of the sound washing over you, and so I think that's that must be an example of this kind of thing for the right people in the right musical contexts. But are there other kinds of sounds, or like thunder? I think might be an example that the lightning and the thunderstorm is certainly a compelling and awesome thing, but the thunder of a thunderstorm can be a pretty compelling thing too, that definitely feels small in the face of that powerful noise.
Or perhaps Richard, like myself, when I hear classical music, my whole body just relaxes, is taken by the music, and I have no clue what a scale is or what a note does, and I can't carry a tune. But I don't remember when it first happened, because I didn't always listen to classical music, but at some point I can literally feel it in my body, and that's just listening on the radio or an app. Rather than a hall or but of course it's I've only been to a few concerts, but it's not so much my body. Then in a concert, you're right, it's more awe. It's like, oh my God, the sound is incredible.
Well, isn't rhythm part of that too? I mean, almost every culture has music that involves rhythm, and I don't know, isn't there also a physiological reaction, like if it's in tune with certain body, like a heartbeat and so on. But I'm thinking also the interesting thing, think of something like a drum circle. It always involves more, that kind of thing involves more than one person. You're producing that rhythm.
Yeah.
Others, and it can give you goosebumps.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before, that large numbers of people working together for a common cause is very awe-inspiring. I mean, it's very emotional to actually see people coming together, not fighting with each other, this, oh boy.
Keltner called it collective effervescence.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
I like that term.
Yeah.
Well, that's the effect also of these things. I think they're called flash mobs.
Yeah.
Where people sing starting with one, and then all of a sudden, and it's like in a public place where you wouldn't think there's any kind of cohesion, but of course it's all the same group that has placed themselves, but it sounds like the world is coming together to sing, you know, or make music.
Yeah. Or all of a sudden dance.
Sometimes.
Yeah, the flash mob fad faded quickly, didn't it? But it was cute for a while, the things people would do. So anyway, so on that note, also thinking what other senses can we evoke, and I think smell probably works well, right? If you get a particularly, you know, for me, roses, I don't know why, well, a lot of people like roses, but you know, a really powerful rose smell, walking down the street, you stop to smell the rose, and it's like, wow. So yeah, so I think it's so smell, taste. Does
No.
taste do it? Can you do awe with taste? Probably.
Hmm.
I guess
Well,
if
I think,
Chocolate.
yeah, and taste and smell, they are really, as I understand, really very basic, wired, you know, early developing brainstem kind of systems. So, and then the whole memory aspect with that, you know, how you have this moment, you know, that you lots of other things are triggered by what you taste or what you.
Oh yeah. Right. Which is an interesting wrinkle on the awe, is that it might be functioning by evoking memory more than other kinds of awe, but because smell is so good at that, it's going to naturally bring it along. Huh.
Although the first time I smelled orange blossoms in Phoenix, I was just blown away just having it in the air, because in Chicago, yes, if your nose went right up to the lilacs and roses, you could get the fragrance. But in Phoenix, it was just pervasive in the air, and I'm like, I was awed by that I could smell it in the air.
A city that smells like orange blossom.
Exactly.
Yeah, that does sound awesome. Well, it would appear we are out of time.
Oh,
Sadly.
I've had a very good time with you all exploring awe.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting.
it was fun.
Yeah, this is and it's really fun for me as a teacher that I can encounter a book sort of randomly and go, wow, this is so interesting, I need to share it. And then there's this place I can go and find some people who are curious about that topic and share it. So
and your enthusiasm really shows.
No. Well, I try to teach stuff I am excited about. So that's, that helps. I'm not doing it the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't stop here, because I've been talking to people about it. So the whole idea it spreads.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And what are you thinking about next quarter or in the future?
Well, I'm going to take a quarter off. I'm in a battle with my restless leg syndrome and some alternative treatments I'm trying, and it's occupying a lot of my attention. But I'm working on a book very slowly with a rabbi friend of mine who is also an atheist, about theology and sort of what does it mean to construct theology from an atheist point of view. So I was thinking about that for probably spring then, to do religion without God would kind of be the topic.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Rabbi in particular without God is pretty interesting.
Well, and I have a PhD in theology, so.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you saying, Richard, that the 10 Commandments says nothing about believing in God.
Nope, not in there. Just don't worship idols.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you all have a good rest of the day and a good winter.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy,
Too.
It's been fun.
and
Thanks a
take
lot.
care.
You
Take care.
too.
Bye.
Bye.